Now watch this drive.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to No Party Affiliation. Every week, we run the same drill: what's true, what's missing, and who stands to gain. The only side that we're on is reality. We're not here for your party line politics. We're here to discuss the history, the propaganda, the unknown, and to give you insight across a variety of personal perspectives stretching all the way across from Hollywood to the CIA. So welcome in. Nothing is as it seems. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Is up. Hey. It's been quite a week. That's all I'm going to say.
Dude.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like time is like sped up. You know, I know that I'm a bit older than you guys, but I feel like it's just going faster and faster because I feel like every day there's something new, and whatever our previous memory was, it gets memory hold of, you know, it seems like a million years ago the chick got shot, and now there's a dude that gets shot in Minnesota over the weekend.
Right.
Yep.
100%. I made a reel the other day about, hey, did anybody catch that the date to drop the Epstein files came and went, and nobody's talking about it anymore?
Right. That got memory hold.
Well, you know what it is, man? I think so many people are chronically online that anytime something big like this happens, it is a paradigm shift. And when things like that happen and people conflate their real lives with what happens online, they do. Shit just goes right in the back of their head. So you have the internet and then the 24/7 news cycle, and it is a constant paradigm shift every time. That's why they say like millennials have what's it called? Disaster fatigue or whatever, because it's constantly happening. It's like 9/11, boom, you know, the housing crisis, boom, GWAT, you know, all this other stuff. It's just, what's it? Crisis fatigue. That's what it is. So it's a real paradigm shift because the algorithm just shows you everything everybody's freaking out about. So that's all what your face is in front of all the time.
Yeah.
Do you think the millennial generation has finally gotten callous to it, or do you think that they've taken on their role of being Chicken Little hysterical, the world is falling at every
I think
turn?
there's a couple camps. I think there's folks like you and I, Chris, who understand it's a game, and we have a level of callousness just based on our jobs, right? And then we know because it's a game that, you know, we're like, oh my God, fuck this, here we go again. But then there's people who use it as in a performative way, and there's a lot of other people who don't want to think about this shit, and they tend to be the people that are really naive and enjoy the performative stuff. And so I think there's two camps. I think that there's people who use it to their advantage, and they truly just can't handle that anything goes on outside of going to get Chick-fil-A every day. And then there's folks like, you know, us who are just like, yep, there it is. There's another fucking bump in the line, as it were. So,
Well, you and I went over there, right? And Drew too. It's like GWAT touched us. So at a certain point, it's like your narrative crossed over it. And then you realize like what the bullshit was, what the real truth on the ground was, like where the propaganda got it wrong. But I think like most of these, or I guess our generational people, have been through this entire cycle, like you said, since kind of like 9/11, really. And none of this has ever physically touched their lives. So in a way, even though they're like crisis fatigued, it's still crisis fatigued from a thing that's on your phone 24/7, and it's never had a thing to do with you.
yeah.
So it's all, it all feels kind of fake.
Yeah,
It's like a video game.
It feels totally fake. You know, as a casual observer of what's going on in social media, you see these videos, and then you see the captions that are written for the videos, And it's like the one that I saw that really, jumped out at me was somebody was texting about ICE using chemical irritants. And it's like it's pepper spray. It's tear gas. We all know
Right.
what it is, but now
Yeah.
it's
Right.
a chemical irritant, like something that has never been invented for that's being unleashed on on the protesters.
That's what they do,
Right.
bro. That's what they do with weather and climate change. They just change the name. Now it's this kind of rain or
It's
this
sarin
kind
gas now.
like that's how they play it. I agree with Brandon though. Going back to the other, I think the two camps really are you bring up y'all. Like the perfect example is you have real world experience, not real world experience paying rent and having a job, but like real world experience where you've gone down the other side of the veil. You've seen what the bad's really like, not just what people bad to the everyday person in America versus what we've seen and or experience is worlds apart. So you see that, and then I think so. There's the practical, like I actually understand how the world works, and not everyone has to have served and worked in the SOF or intel community or the military or whatever to do that, but you've somehow had significant life experience that the everyday layman does not have, and just to some extent on that same line of thinking, it's like, okay, well, how could these dumbasses who go along with this hook, line, and sinker, how could they see anything other than what they're being told because they haven't seen anything, they haven't lived anything, they haven't done anything. But I think that's the distinction.
Yeah. That's the experience you brought up reminds me real fast that Chris does have to disclaim himself so his experience doesn't get him in trouble. But I have some thoughts on what you said, Drew, because I think you're onto something.
All right, Cuck Chair engaged. What is up? And any and all opinions that you hear here on this channel belong completely and totally to the person that is saying them. They do not represent the United States Army, the Department of War, or any other entity within the United States government. You're all covered now. You can say whatever you
Word.
want.
Now, I totally agree with you, Drew. We have permission. I agree with you, Drew. I'll use this most recent example as a way to talk about this. There have been a lot of videos of people who are like, fuck ICE or fuck Trump, all this stuff, right? And they're making this very important distinction about how it's moral right versus moral wrong. And I don't believe that in this regard with this case. And I think that one of the reasons why people view it as moral right versus moral wrong is because they don't want to acknowledge that there are accountability pieces that belong to everyone involved in these situations, right? They don't want to have to acknowledge that Alex Pretti has some personal accountability for what happened, because he does, right? They don't want to have to acknowledge that the agents have to deal with going through these situations constantly, and then they're back out there over and over and over and over again. As somebody who's been a police officer, this is just the reality of the situation. You could go from a child molestation case to a domestic to a traffic accident to, you're supposed to operate at that level at all times. And so I think that's what it is. It's an abandonment of this like mechanism in our society for personal maintenance that's gone away. And so when people view these situations, they just view them in this total binary, like, this is wrong. It's like, yeah, somebody died. You're right. That sucks. I can acknowledge that. But what you're not talking about is the accountability piece, probably because you're not carrying that in your personal life. Just my opinion on that.
No, I think you're right. I think, yeah, I mean, again, there's a total lack of perspective because of a lack of experience, which leads to emotions play in, yes, but not to the level that they do in our society now. Like it's all emotion for them, and not the other. But I think you're right. I think you're right across the board, and that's just how this plays out.
It seems like
quote. Sorry,
I was just going to say, it seems like there's a lot of FOMO going on with the people who are out there protesting because they never were in harm's way. They never had, they never seemed to have any kind of challenges in their life. So it's kind of like this sort of Don Quixote thing going on where they're looking for these windmills that don't
the windmill.
exist. They just keep, one event after another. It's like, oh, I got to get myself amped up at this because this is the crisis that I've been waiting for to be a part of the change, because they haven't done anything. And when your life is that devoid of actually meeting a challenge and conquering that challenge, then of course your natural instinct is going to want to go out and find that challenge.
Well, and that offends them so much. Like, it breaks their little hearts to hear like you haven't done anything, you don't have any life experience, because they think they do. And again, the kicker is until you actually do, you don't. And until you actually do, you don't know what it looks like or feels like to have that experience. So it's my favorite thing to cut deep with them and just let them know that they've done nothing, because it's so offensive to them. But it's like, but you have, and you need to realize that you've done nothing, and then you need to course correct, and you need to go do something, whatever that might be. Not basement and pizza pockets.
Yeah, sorry. There's an old quote. I can't remember who to attribute it to, but it says, "Opinion without an opinion without experience quickly becomes arrogance." And that is pretty definitive of a lot of what we're seeing here. And that's an epidemic you're talking about, Drew, of a whole entire culture and a group of people who don't have experience and don't want to. That's why these people are so open to the concept of socialism and this idea that things can be provided for you. And they tend to live outside of the reality that the provision is based off of work and experience and all these other things. It's like, that's why I actually was thinking about this earlier, because I have some friends who work in the professional music industry, and of course all of their opinions are that this is total murder, this is an execution, like all of this stuff. And it's like, I look at this and I see you guys providing, like, music is important, it's culture, I totally agree with that concept, but what are you truly providing inside of a society that holds it up? Like, I agree, culture is an important thing. It does hold up society, but not in the way somebody who's out providing security, not in the way somebody who's out providing construction work, all of these other things, like, going out and putting yourself in harm's way. So it's that whole Jack Nicholson line from A Few Good Men. It's like, you operate and live under the blanket. You live inside the reality that we create for you every day, and all you've done truly is criticize. That's what I see. Criticize, criticize, criticize. So...
Well, perspective is supremely important to what you guys are talking about, and the truth matters the absolute most when it's inconvenient, right? And like, our founding fathers understood this when they put when they put these ideas down on paper, because the idea is that humans are fallible and we're all like bendable to these situations of high stress and high emotion, and the longing to be in a camp or a tribe and to be accepted, and this like falling into us versus them. I mean, that is the like human nature, right? So at a certain point, I understand why people do it. But I'm reminded of the story of, when John Adams had to, or decided to go run defense for, I think it was 3 British soldiers that were involved in a shooting very much like this, where you had like a protest that was starting to turn violent, turned into almost a riot in Boston, and then British soldiers fired into the crowd, and several people were injured and killed. And then John Adams steps up to the plate and he goes, I'm going to defend these guys because nobody else would. They just wanted to lynch them and have crowd justice and be done with it. And his standpoint there almost got him basically persona non grata from his own people there in Boston, because he was standing up against his own crowd to do that, going against the grain to do that, basically saying, like, if we throw out the ideals of Western law, then we're no better than they are, right? And it becomes, it's really easy to stand up against your enemy, especially when you have people standing around you, but it's really hard to stand up against your own people, right? And kind of another sub point to this is patriotism, Christianity. Like, these are things that people like to kind of wear the jersey of a lot of times because they want to feel like they're part of a group or like a part of a tribe, right? But then when it comes down to doing the hard thing of standing up against the tyranny of the majority, right? Like, we may be in the right about this, but we believe in constitutional republicanism so that the tyranny of the majority doesn't get forced on other people. Like, it is the most important thing to stand up for truth when it's inconvenient. And this was one of those situations where it's like, I don't think this was a good one. Like, the optics of it were terrible from the off. A round goes off. CBP, which is a really important point. A lot of people keep saying ICE because it's become the rhetoric, but this was actually CBP. Different mission set, different federal agency, which might have contributed to this. Maybe they don't have the different leadership, different training that they possess. This was their faux pas, as it were, right? But round goes off, these guys scatter, security rounds get dumped. Like the optics of it are absolutely terrible, but we've got to be able to hold the line, right? And we're going to say a bunch of shit today that pisses everybody off on both sides, and I'm here for it. But we've got to be able to hold the line and call balls and strikes, even when your own side hates it. And by the way, Brandon, there was one group in here that might be getting some unwanted accountability that you didn't mention, and that might be Sig Sauer. Just throwing that one out there.
Dude.
I know some guys who work there pretty high up. And it's like, oh man, you're having a shitty week.
Dude, you know they're watching that and they're like just hoping somebody don't catch that on camera. And today has been that day. Today has been that day for sure.
Well, Chris, you bring up a good point. When I look at that shooting, there's an old term that I first heard when I was doing cops back in the day, and it's called awful but lawful. And I think that's an example of what we saw over the weekend. It's awful, but in the end, it's going to be lawful.
Well, I think it's an important distinction to draw, too, that just because something is legal doesn't make it morally ethical. There's a lot of things that you can do inside of the realms of legality, you know, like I'm thinking about Obama just drone striking people. You know, was it legal? Turns out it was, because you can designate anybody a terrorist and send a drone to their front door. Was it morally ethical? I think a lot of it you could take back to the books and be like, oh, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, in this specific case, you know, you see the one guy in the gray jacket pull the gun out, turn away. He grabs it, somebody yells gun, and then almost simultaneously the gun goes off, and then it's like, then what do you do? You know, if you're in that pile of people, it's
right.
And then you see clearly in that dude's hand, there's something there. My guess, it might be a cell phone or something else that he has in his hand. And at that point, it's like, you know, you have a split second to make a decision, you know, after somebody yells gun and you hear a round go off.
Yeah. No, if you watch that video, man, it's, I want to say this too. When you are, even if you're in a group of people and you're responding to something like this, you're dealing with a subject on the ground who's being hostile and fighting all of this. Even if you took those people and you separate them and you debrief them and then you get statements from them on what happened, there are going to be some very similar descriptions, but they are not all going to be the same. So people have to understand, even those involved in that situation are not going to be able to recount exactly what it is that happened, because they're all experiencing it individually. And so when like a lot of people, the guy who shot and killed that agent, they're like, he's looking that direction when the gun comes out of the holster. It's like, you're right. But if you also look 3 feet to the right, the majority of the police are working on Alex's top half, his arms, his head, because that's where you're trained to go. Control somebody's limit their movement, right? And so it's very plausible that, yeah, could you say he could see the holster? You could. You could also say that he's watching where they're working too, and doesn't realize that gun is gone. And then there's that negligent discharge, and he sees a holster that's empty. And then and this is total speculation. I don't know that's what happened. The guy was even wearing sunglasses. You can't tell, right? And so that's one of the main points I want to make with this, is that no one can know what these guys were thinking, and even those involved are not going to give you the same recount of what happened, because they're individuals. That's it.
Yeah. No,
I think you made go ahead, Drew.
No, I was just that was it. I think it's a great point to make. Good thing for people to understand.
I think that you made a really good point yesterday too, Brandon, in that everybody's right. There's obviously like team law enforcement side on this one, and then there's team Alex Pretti on this one. Right off the top, I wish we could get back to a day and age where like it's okay to not have an opinion about something because you have zero context of it, like zero situational awareness. You weren't there, you saw a video. I wish people would go back to that, but those days are of the past, obviously. So everybody's immediately a grappling expert, a BJJ expert, a law enforcement expert right now, right? But you made a great point yesterday in that even if Pretti was reaching for his holster, you're assigning a motive to him to say that he was reaching to draw down on the officers, when obviously we saw somebody reach into the fray, recover his weapon, and leave. And I know from training with conceal and carry that if anybody goes for my weapon, where I usually carry at the appendix, I'm automatically taking the fight to there and pinning their hands down, because if that weapon leaves my holster, now we have a live weapon, right? And like, situation is now lethal regardless, because weapons in the mix. So if he felt somebody come in for his, I think he was carrying in like the 4 o'clock kind of back of his hip position, it looks like, at least. Like, if he felt somebody go in there and grab for his weapon and felt it yank free, he could have been like reaching for a security check on his weapon.
Right.
Does that mean he was going to draw it? Right. You don't know now. And to say, you know, I get annoyed at everybody that's like, oh, well, he was carrying 2 magazines. Like, I have... Like this is
That's
my
standard carry, bro.
This is one of my rigs that I carry all the time. Having a sidecar that comes with your rig so that you can carry an extra magazine is pretty much par for the course.
Right.
If you're going to conceal and carry, so you're showing your inexperience on its face. You know nothing about the Second Amendment. You know nothing about the conceal and carry community. When you say that, you're ascribing a whole bunch of motive that you can't, and then you're also violating the ideal of innocent until proven guilty. And unfortunately, this is one of those cases where we're never going to have a trial to flesh all this stuff out. We have the videos, and I hope we get to see at some point the body cam videos that come out of it to get as much situational awareness on it as we can. But like, this was just not a good look, like, on all around.
Right.
And you bring up, like, everyone's got an opinion now. Everyone's all of a sudden an expert, even though, as we talked about earlier in the show, most people talking, certainly on the other side, but even on our side too, haven't done shit. So, like, just sit this one down. Here's a coloring book. Let the experts talk about it. But, like, it's a complicated situation, so not that many people should have really great opinions on it, and you certainly shouldn't listen to not that many. But the thing that still drives me the most insane, and you can feel in it, it could be some dude getting shot in Minneapolis, it could be the chick getting shot, it could be anything surrounding national security, politics, geopolitics, etc. Beyond them having an opinion, it's just the way that people have gotten where they have to take this side or that side, and there's no independent thinking and no in between, no, like, what do we do? What Trump said, we're on the side of law enforcement. We're on his side.
Right.
Like, there's no in between. It's like, you guys are so freaking dumb. Like, if that's where you land after careful thought, and I would say if you land on one of the extremes, you probably didn't do any of that careful thinking. But that's the thing that gets me so mad. It's like, everyone is so loud right now about this. Like, why did you come to that conclusion? Explain it.
Yeah.
They can't. It's like, okay, so you did it because Papa MAGA said you had to do this, or Papa, you know, whatever we're saying, Smurf, someone else on the left, like Obama said to think this. Like, you're a dumbass. Like, think for yourself. Like, these people don't care about you. Like, make your own determinations and decisions. Talk to experts. Don't listen to there's so many, we've done so many different things in conservative media with networks. And man, Tom knows exactly who I'm talking about. Like, I think the people on our side, the conservative side of the aisle, I'm not registered with either of them, but like, I identify more as the conservative, which sounds gay. But I think our side, like, some of the stuff they say and do is so equally dumb as the other side. It's like, man, I hate you just as much as I hate them. Why I'm not a Republican anymore, because I don't want to be associated with you dumbasses.
All right, and you hear him saying, oh, why is somebody bringing a gun to a protest? And it's like, dude, come on. You know, you're the same, you know, to a person who is like, yo, it's my right to carry. Yeah.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
To me, that's a non-starter. That's not even part of the argument. To me, the biggest, the seeing the whole field from my perspective, and I think there's a lot of people like me that sort of see the same field, is both sides are pushing toward what the puppeteers really want. The puppeteers really want to centralize law enforcement. They want a federal police. They want to have, you know, the Insurrection Act. They want martial law. They want to clamp down on people's rights. And both sides are feeding into this. And it's like, God, and I see all these posts, Insurrection Act now. I'm like, no. Let's pump the brakes on this a little bit, you know, Swifty. Let's relax a little bit, because none of us want martial law. We don't want the insurgency act. We don't want any of that. It sounds good. It might relieve a lot of pressure and emotionally how you're feeling, but in the long run, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even have any. Sorry, Brandon. A lot of people don't even have any. I guess like context, right, of what a federalized police force would look like. But this is what obviously. The higher level government wants, because if the police is ultimately accountable to them, then you can cram down whatever an administration wants to do. And that is, something that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you obviously want to enact like whatever your administration's domestic policies are, right? But to the person on the ground in a local community, you're not thinking this through, right? You want federalized law enforcement that doesn't know you from Adam, doesn't know your local customs, like your local culture, isn't accountable to you whatsoever. It's like you're in Minneapolis and you want somebody that's coming in from New York or God forbid California on the other side. It isn't able to enact violence, like violate your rights because they have a badge that says they can do so, destroy your community because they don't care what the fallout from enacting federal policy is, and then get redeployed elsewhere and just leave behind them a wake of that's what you want. Like, think about it, right? Localized law enforcement, that's your sheriff, that's your police chief. At least they're accountable to you, right? To the voter, you get a say in who gets that job, and then much more say in how, police action is dictated in your local jurisdiction, whatever that is. Federal law enforcement, you don't get any of that, right? And this is actually one of the places where I think right now oh boy, follow me. Right now, I think the left is making a good point in so much as they're being effective with it to their base in saying that ICE is being tyrannical and so on and so forth. Right? I don't agree with them. I'm saying they're making a good point because it's being effective with their base. You can tell it's being effective.
Yep.
Right? But we know totally for a fact that if the shoe were on the other foot and the left is back in charge, we'll just have COVID level draconian lockdowns again, because they have no compunction in using federal law enforcement when it's to their own ends, which is why I push back on this entire "it's okay when we do it" is never an acceptable argument.
Right.
Ever.
No.
But that's the right now.
Well,
yeah.
Tom, I actually wanted to talk about the outcome of what you were describing about how effective propaganda is, because that's what you're talking about, wanting these people to react a certain way. That's the goal of propaganda, is action. One of the things that I've talked about before is Carl Schmitt. Are you guys familiar with Carl Schmitt at all? He was a German. He was a political thought, like a writer, philosopher in Weimar Germany, and a lot of his writing was picked up by the Nazi Party, specifically because he talked about a lot of the social dynamics that were going on with people's interpretation of one another. And he broke people down into 4 categories primarily. There's friend, there's opponent, there's rival, and then enemy. So this is often called the friend-enemy distinction. And I think that the left specifically has kind of crossed over a threshold into this arena very, very much. And I think that we can evidence that with some of what Cam Higby discovered, and we can talk about this here in a second. But an opponent is someone that you disagree with inside a shared political order, right? A rival is somebody who's competing for power, but still recognizes the legitimacy of that political order. An enemy is somebody who is an existential threat to you, and there's a denial of coexistence with that person, right? And nobody is seeing one another as an opponent necessarily. Most people don't see each other even as a rival. There's so many people that see one another as an enemy, and that is when you begin to look at people as completely dispensable. And that I see very, very much. And that's the outcome of this propaganda, that you're not dealing with others in your country. You're dealing with people who are to be dispatched with, and people that you can't even share existence with anymore. And you can hear that in the language when they talk about not just ICE, but maybe other conservatives, specifically people who are like really hardcore MAGA. You saw it with the justification of, people's justification with Charlie Kirk getting murdered, all of these things. There is no no mechanism I see that's going on in them to cool down their own thought processes. And I think that's a marker, like you said, Chris, of the effectiveness of that tactic. And it's become organized now, even more than I think a lot of us really realized. And if you guys have seen what Cam Higby uncovered, right, with this Signal group chat, there's
Right.
like echelons of leadership inside this. Some of the admins are politicians or strategists for like Tim Waltz. It's gotten to the point where this is exactly the same sort of thing that you would see in an insurgency in Afghanistan. That's exactly what this is. This is echelons of leadership. This is TTPs. This is a manual on action. This is actionable intelligence on other people, which involves the use of dedicated resources for law enforcement or otherwise. Like this is exactly what propaganda is hoping happens. It's a feature of or the propaganda is a feature of all of these operational capabilities coming to a point where they are functioning in society day to day, right?
Anyone who's ever dealt with counterinsurgency, dealt with counterterrorism, dealt with all this stuff, like, you're absolutely right, Brandon. Like, this is like so much of it's the same playbook on what you experience. And from someone who's been over there and done so much of it, it's like literally all I know how to do. Like, I'm really not good at much, but like that's all I did for my adult life, so I know that stuff. And you hope you never see it at home. And then you do, and you're not seeing it at home from extremists. There are, and to be clear, there's IRGC, cells here. There's extremist cells from radicalized, radical terror groups. All that's here too. Right. But you're seeing this at this level of organization from fellow Americans who hate everyone in this chat, in this room, including you guys in the audience. And everything about the American way of life, the same way that Al Qaeda wants you to all burn in a blaze of glory as well. It's wild to see, and I hope people take it serious, because when you've got people who are that committed to organizing things, to pushing the propaganda, to motivate and cultivate this kind of environment, then to do the kind of things they're doing, and they're doing it here at home against our people. Even though sometimes our people do things wrong, absolutely. That's a scary fucking thought. Like, Now, are the kids in the streets mouth breathers who are worthless and will never bring any value to society? Yes, but it's the bigger picture. It's everything that goes into that that's really terrifying.
So, one of the things I want to say that I thought about when you were talking, Drew, is remember what happened with Gretchen Whitmer?
Yeah.
The coordination that was going on, even though there was a bunch of FBI agents in that, like they were coordinating the kidnap of Gretchen Whitmer. Yep. Like that's the same level of coordination you're talking about right now that these people are doing, even more so, I would say, because it's an actual network of folks, not just a couple of dudes. And granted, there was like a dozen FBI agents involved in that, and we can have a whole conversation about how screwed that situation was. But the planning, the intent, all of this stuff, it's very similar, man. That's all I got to say. It's very, very similar. And I kind of doubt we'll see the same level of the application of the law, as it were, on these folks, though.
I don't think so either.
No. And, to that point, the arrests are here, right? They nabbed, I think, two of the individuals. At least one of them was one of the political organizers from BLM or whatever that stormed into that church a couple weeks ago, right? And that was really cool. They were in jail for like 24 hours and then bonded out.
You look at January 6th, you had so many people who were locked up for years and years in solitary confinement, and then you have something that went down in the church, and it's like, okay, they've been arrested, yay, and then all of a sudden, oh, they're out. So that actually calls into my question. The one guy who was kind of one of the ringleaders of it, dude, he just reeks of Fed asset to me, like a Ray Epps type character. Yeah. Because as soon as they put him into custody, I was like, oh, this dude's going to be out in hours.
Well, what you just talked about, where people are looking for wins against one another, like keeping score, that's actually, again, more evidence of the efficacy of the propaganda. Because you're not looking at the propagandist, you're looking at one another, which is exactly what they want you to do. And this, like I was kind of saying before, propaganda is just a piece of the operational unit that's going on. You know, the Bolsheviks had their own pieces of propaganda. They had Pravda, they had all these other little teeny newspapers. The Antifa, actual Antifa groups in Weimar Germany had the same thing. So did the capitalists, all this stuff. And if you think about it like a plant, right? Like the actual operations of it is the stalk or whatever, and the propaganda are these flowers. People come by, they pick up, they pollinate, they proliferate all this propaganda, and it just fuels the soil, and you have all of these other plants that grow behind it, and you know, they all look a little different because they're not quite the same thing. And that's, again, you know, how propaganda works. It's your interpretation, it's your POV, all of these other things. But the point is you're looking at the flowers, man. Like when you walk down the street, you're not looking at other people, you're looking at the flowers. And that's sort of this problem, and it's what Cam Higby has really proven here, is that there is a concerted effort not only to just other people, that's over, right? There's a group of people who have successfully decided that the others on the other side, they are now an existential threat and they cannot coexist. But there is a leadership echelon and a legitimacy green light coming from politicians who are admins in this chat. I guarantee that, and this is, again, my opinion, I'm not in this chat, right? But that they know that some of the admins are politicians or strategists or people that work with Governor Walz, or people that work with Mayor Jacob Frey, all this stuff. And what are they doing? Just like anybody else. Like when you are a PFC, oh, the Sergeant did it, I'm going to do it, right? Oh, man, Sergeant Major did that, I'm going to go do that. Right? That's exactly what happens. And it's not necessarily stochastic terrorism, but that's kind of exactly how that shit works, where you have this expectation of behavior that is now okayed. And I think that's one of the craziest things. I would even say, too, that what Cam Higby showed is a greater thing, or has a greater impact on the paradigm that we all were unaware that others were living in than what Nick Shirley discovered, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, because fraud kind of expected, right? Like seeing this kind of like deception and malintent that's there and alive and well, and apparently he's doing super well in what he discovered and how many people are involved and how widespread it goes. Like,
sure.
Like again, how does anyone at this point in time that's paying even this much attention have any confidence that things are going in a good direction? Like anyone who's walking around, like I wish so bad that I could be a rose-colored sunglasses kind of a dude.
Right.
Like it sounds amazing. Like you see people who are like, things are going great. Like everything's good. Like this, it's like, okay, well that part's good.
Ignorance
that part's
is bliss.
good, but like everything else is absolutely a dumpster fire. I honestly, at this point, I know that not everyone, you know, a lot of people still listen to Legacy and watch Legacy media, so they don't get all of this. Like, they don't highlight all of the nitty-gritty details and expose how bad everything really is. But, dude, if you're just, like, sort of on social media, like, I don't get it. I don't get how anyone has a positive outlook. That sounds so depressing, and we'll try and rally it and make things better. Like, we'll have some cake or something later. But that, like, honestly, like, to all that to say, Brandon, you're 100% right. What he discovered, I think, is way worse than Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley stuff is like, that's great work, dude. Good job. Doesn't surprise me in the least. This right here, though, terrifying.
Dude, I would be so pissed if I was one of these people who are going out getting tear gassed every day and knowing that there's a whole upper echelon of politicians that are setting me up for this to be cannon fodder. Right. It, to me, is like, you know, the whole jihadist thing. It's the people at the top are never the ones who are strapping on bomb vests. It's the dolts down at the bottom that they convince to be their foot soldiers and go, you know, into a Sbarro and clack it off and, you know, kill as many people as they can. That's what we're seeing here. You know, not to the level of clacking off a bomb vest, but being the foot soldiers to take the beatings, to take the gas, and in some instances, taking the bullets. I'd be like, you know, this is the side that I'm on, the side that I really think that, you know, what they're saying, you know, I believe that this is actually, you know, the Fourth Reich is happening, and I want to be in there for this fight, and I truly believe this. But then all of a sudden, this comes to light, and it's like, oh, I see what's going on. You motherfuckers are using me. And what you're hoping is that I die, so when I'm dead, you can hold me up as some sort of martyr. It reminds me of COVID.
Yes.
When you had all these governors put in all these COVID positive elderly people back into nursing homes so they could inflate the body count. This is, I feel like this is escalating into an inflation of body count for the left.
Well said.
Well, first of all, one of the dirty secrets that, and ask anybody that ever spent any time over in the GWAT of who the jihadis would actually use the GWATis. That's funny.
Jihadis versus jihadis,
Whoopsies.
dude. I like it.
But who the jihadis would actually use to strap on their S vests, and they'll tell you, like, you're looking at a lot of people that were mentally handicapped. You're looking at a lot of people that were sexually, mentally abused, and to the point of being Stockholmed into doing this type of stuff. It's like a well-known secret for anybody that was there. But you go watch any TV show now, like SEAL Team or any movies or whatever, they'll never show you that dark side of things, right? Because for some reason we're stuck painting our enemies in some type of noble light that we ourselves can somehow then palate, I guess, which is a very interesting thing to me. Like, God forbid that we piss off radical jihadis by showing them for what they really are. But
Well, are they going to hate us?
yeah, exactly.
Right.
I never figured that out. But I'm really glad, Brandon, for the point that you were making about the propaganda. And Tom, you were hitting on it too, and you're absolutely right. The entire point of the propaganda is to instigate and set up situations like this in order to foment and stoke tensions, so that these situations have the what's the word I'm looking for, like the atmosphere, and then we're throwing all these actors in together so that things like this happen, so we can capitalize on it from a narrative standpoint, regardless of like what side of the aisle you're on. Like, the propaganda machine is belt fed on both sides, trying to like spin the narrative. But what a lot of people don't understand too is that on the ground, like this activism, there's an entire business model that surrounds activism on the ground. Like, absolutely none of this is organic and doesn't just pop off by happenstance, right? And it's like, to kind of draw a through line for most people to understand, let's take kind of, George Soros, because it's a well-known example, right? Giant political donor, donates lots of money to 501c3 and 501c4 organizations that are also receiving government grants, by the way. Go dig into that for just a little bit and understand. And you've got organizations like Move On, Indivisible, Avaz. You can go Google any single one of these and look at the benign political jargon that they have on their websites. But then these organizations then go on and funnel their money, all completely legitimate, by the way. So it goes back to the argument that we were having about things that are legal, but maybe not morally ethical. Funnel all their money completely legally, down to legal organizations on the side, like the ACLU, and there's all these different legal pathways that are set up. And these organizations are the one that are bailing rioters out of jail, that are setting up legal defense funds for them. Famous example is Kamala Harris was donating to the bailout funds for people during the summer of love after George Floyd. Everybody kind of remembers that. All of this stuff is still happening. And then those nonprofits also on the ground will go to crowdsourcing websites. So you can just Google them and pull them up, where they will hire protesters. They will hire activists. And these, and it's all completely legitimate. Like, they look at resumes, they look at CVs,
Crisis actors too.
And they hire crisis actors to go there on the ground to foment, right? So everybody's seeing examples of pallets of bricks showing up and being dropped off on street corners, and U-Haul trucks showing up, and then a bunch of dudes piling out the back, all wearing the exact same black hoodies, black pants, bandanas, carrying signs that are pre-made. Brandon, you talk about all the time showing up at that one campus event. They all have the exact same UNICEF tent. Like, as if they all went to REI that exact day and got them. It's like, where does all this stuff come from? It's all legitimate legal money that's donated
Legitimized
from
propaganda.
From crisis donors like George Soros, that goes through nonprofits, that goes to legal funds, that goes to activists on the ground to foment on this. And then the media, to your point, Brandon, plays its dutiful role on the side of capturing the crisis points when they happen, and then propagandizing it in order to start the loop all over again. And the thing that's happening here, though, and I wonder, is from an unconventional warfare standpoint, we have what's kind of called the liminal zone, right? And that's where you'll have civil unrest, right, or civil strife that will kind of bump up against a threshold of breaking into open violence to them where the government has to get involved. So right now, kind of that crisis point, that flashpoint would be Insurrection Act. Are we going to have enough violence to justify politically Insurrection Act coming in? And what you want to do, if you're playing your cards right, is keep it in that liminal zone where you have kind of these thresholds, these flashpoints that break open, that legitimize more activism so that you can run your recruitment operations, so that you can get more kind of your activatable normies involved in it because they don't like seeing what's going on, and you're emotionally triggering them and so on and so forth, right? You can kind of get them involved to be your dutiful people on the street that get caught up in the chaos. But you don't want it to break open into such open conflict that then federal forces get involved or open conflict actually happens, because they know if that were the case, I mean, the George Soros money would turn off like that, because even as powerful as he is, can't compete with the federal government. Because if they were to do domestic terrorism and actually go that direction, I mean, now you're starting to talk about media blackouts and shutting down their signals, communications, and actually putting federal troops in there, and they don't want that. So this zone that they're playing in right now, the idea is to keep it there, right up at the 90th percentile, and then just hold it there so that you can keep this crisis loop rolling along.
Well, what you're describing, I know that Drew and Chris, you certainly are like factional red team, blue team type stuff. It's factional Cold War, and I say that to say that there are a bunch of different ways that you can recognize that that's going on, right? And we'll treat it like red team, blue team. I don't mean Republican and Democrat, though. That this is kind of the context we're talking about here. There are certain actions that happen that give license to both blue team and red team action, and some of them overlap with one another and some of them don't, because there are different motivations for each groups. But what you were talking about before, Tom, like last year Charlie Kirk got assassinated, and that's a martyr now for red faction, and that is license for further action and license for the pendulum to move and justification for people to want retribution and all these other things. And then blue team, now we recognize they have an entire, not just propaganda supported, but operationally supported by money and all this other stuff, running a insurrection style campaign in Minnesota. And one of the things that they use is something called a meme bazaar, and both sides do this. And I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a photo that circulated. It got last time I looked at it, had 5.5 million views on X. And it was a AI generated photo of the scene with the ICE agents on top of, or not ICE agents, but CBP agents on top of Alex Pretti, and one of them had his gun pointed right at the back of his head. So it looks completely and totally execution, right? That's what it looks like. Totally fake. And so that is a method of like factional Cold War. To wage it is propaganda and what's called a meme bazaar, because it's how it proliferates online so fast. And there are people who think that photo is real, because I've seen it shared, and then there's outrage and all this other stuff because it looks terrible. But it reminds me so much of what the FBI was doing very much during the civil rights era, and then some of the time leading up before that, but what J. Edgar Hoover was doing it with COINTELPRO, and some of the license that he was given then by then Attorney General RFK, the real RFK, not RFK Jr., right, to go after specifically communists. That was the whole designation and the permission sort of that Roosevelt gave Hoover, and then later Truman kind of gave Hoover this like blank check, because he's like, I don't want to fucking know anything that you're doing. And then Hoover operated like that through several presidents. But when you look at the FBI and you look at its origins, it actually was called the Bureau of Office of Investigation, and they didn't even have a badge. They didn't have the ability to arrest anybody. All they was almost like a notes-taking organization. And that obviously gradually morphed into something else. And then obviously there's the 1930s with the Untouchables and the organized crime that was going on in the U.S. And then they needed to have this the people to be armed up and arrest people and all this other shit. But everything that's going on today, these tactics of smearing people and propaganda and lying and funneling sophist level information, part true, part false, into the online community, into the mainstream media, all of this is the same sort of tactics that Hoover's FBI was doing to discredit not just communists, right? Because we don't like communists. But even though what he was doing was illegal, wiretapping, all this other stuff that wasn't constitutional, and then the civil rights era as well with people. We could talk about Martin Luther King, but there was a lot of other people that had that happen to specifically. But it's a very COINTELPRO style tactic. It just goes to show you that human beings don't change much when they have a narrative they want to push and then a goal that they want to accomplish when they've decided that another group of people doesn't deserve the same protections that they have, right?
I think what they've done as far as propaganda goes, and the first time I saw it was during GWAT, and you would see ISIS with prisoners in orange jumpsuits, and I'm thinking to myself, why are they in orange jumpsuits? You know, these guys are supposed to be like these, you know, cave dwellers or hiding in urban areas, just kind of like guerrilla warfare, and all of a sudden you see them in the background and they're wearing uniforms now. They're wearing, you know, black BDUs or something, and their prisoners are in orange jumpsuits. What? First of all, who's paying for the orange jumpsuits? Where did they get
Jeff
them?
Bezos.
And why did they feel the need to have their prisoners change clothes? That was something that I was like, this seems really weird. And then there was one execution, I can't remember, one beheading, I can't remember, but it was an American, and it was windy out. And he read a statement, and what I noticed when the wind blew, his mic was on the inside of his jumpsuit. So whoever mic'd him knew that there would be too much wind and decided to mic him on the inside to block the wind. So that's somebody who clearly knows how to mic somebody. So whenever I see, you know, since that point forward, whenever I see something looks too perfect for a visual representation of what you think a bad guy is, it's like, okay, this goes a lot deeper than just some, you know, fly-by-night sort of insurgency. This is a well-funded thing. Like, you know, you look at the Patriot Front, khaki pants, they all match.
Dude, those guys.
There's no way that you know, but that's to the left.
Thing ever, yeah.
Yeah, to the left, that's what they envision their bad guys being, you know, these preppy white dudes from suburbia who want to take over America and make it white and all this other kind of crap that, you know, that they're fed. Where conversely, you have, you know, the black bloc with, you know, all dressed in black with their keffiyehs or bandanas or whatever it is. So on the right, that's their bad guy. So I have to say, when it comes to wardrobes, the guys on the left, whoever's funding them, is doing it on the cheap and making, you know, the bad guys for the right, you know, seem like, okay, this is like, you know, seems more like grassroots. Even if they're trying to pull other people in, the left trying to pull other people into their side, it's like, okay, well, I don't have to invest that much money into a wardrobe. I can just wear all black and be a part of this team.
Yeah.
Good point.
I do think that it's hilarious, though. It's always when the crisis reaches fever point that it's those pesky Bill of Rights that always gets in the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's always the crisis that's used to justify. It's like, well, this would be a whole lot easier if that pesky Fourth Amendment didn't get in the way of me looking into your stuff to see what it is. You know what I mean? And like, I think that your example about COINTELPRO is like a really good one to unpack, because it's like, I think that it's far enough away now that we could work through it, and it's more maybe apolitical would be a good way to view it, because it's like, oh, this one's not going to touch you. But if they were doing it in the 60s, do you think they stopped? Right? And you talked about the organizational creep of the FBI. That's every organization the government's ever started ever. Like eventually, Housing and Human Services is going to have an armed section of it in order to.
Well, to your point too, it fed into the proliferation of more behavior like that, right? The development of the CIA came out of the Office of Strategic Services, which came after the FBI, right? And so you had the first director, I think it's Bill Donovan was his name, saw just how much freedom J. Edgar Hoover had, and Donovan and Hoover were basically frenemies with one another. And he was like, well, fuck, if he's doing that, I'm doing this. And it's exactly what happened. They just, I'm not going to be outdone by this dude who, and it's funny too, because he's the one where the gay rumors came from with Hoover as well, because he was trying to discredit him. He's like, well, you've never seen him in a relationship with a woman, have you? It's because he's gay. And then that has stuck with him his entire life. But seriously, like that's what happened, you know? It continues because it makes other people want to do it because they see somebody else have something and they're like, oh man, well, I'm going to do that and I'm going to do it better. And I'm going to make it even more grandiose because now I have way more money than you to do it. Well, now I'm going to go fight in Congress and get more money and I'm going to do this shit, you know? And thank God somebody or a group of people in Media, Pennsylvania waited till the night that Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier had one of the biggest boxing matches in world history. And the fun thing with that is when you look back at it, Muhammad Ali was famously anti-Vietnam War. Joe Frazier tended to be more pro-establishment, essentially, and saw like the concept of the draft and Muhammad Ali refusing to be drafted as this negative. And during the time, this was painted as this sort of fight against the anti-establishment and the establishment. And those guys, when they went into that office in Media, Pennsylvania, and they discovered all of this stuff proving what Hoover was doing, it took to come off the heels of this fight, which was symbolic for this national fight, and then to prove that the establishment was doing everything that they'd been accused of for the past several years because of Vietnam, was one of the most like things that rocked the federal government in the eyes of the people, because it just proved that this is without a doubt, we're being spied on, we're being manipulated, all the information we're getting is lies, all of this stuff, you know. And then that just, you know, tended to be what the thread that everybody started pulling on. And as years went on, there was more and more with phone calls and all this other shit. And you would have thought Nixon would have learned something, I guess, from his time being friends with J. Edgar Hoover and recording conversations in the Oval Office, but that didn't happen either. So anyway.
But when you've got a good idea and you get caught because it's illegal what you're doing, it's just not going to go away. You're going to rebrand it into something else. So to me, COINTELPRO became the Patriot Act. You know, it just rebranded.
Several steps in between. Like you never lose. There's a couple things that never happen. Power never becomes less. You know, even if you start, to your point, you know, Chris, earlier, like the mission creep and some. Everyone's chartered to do this, and a lot of them have all started with this narrow charter, and then they all just do this, and all of a sudden, all of them, everything, all these organizations do the same freaking thing. It's like it's bananas. But you never take a step back on power or these types of programs here, and then bureaucratically speaking, when you add new layers of bureaucracy, it's like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if that came back and someone repealed? It's like that's never going to happen. You're going to get 10 more layers on top of that. It's like those things always just are going that way. Oh, we're so glad that the renditions program's gone. Okay. Like, stop it. Like, first of all, why? But second of all, it's just something else now. Like, it's just like you guys are saying with COINTELPRO. Like, okay, let's just call it something else. We'll rebrand it just like they rebrand, you know, everything in the government, but also climate change and all that other stuff. Everything's always being rebranded, if you haven't picked up on that theme. But, like...
Yeah, they're money laundering schemes now. That's what it is. Bureaucracy is institutional cancer. That's a good way to look at it. It just metastasizes and becomes more and more bureaucracy. Like there's no getting rid of it once it's there. You know, kind of fun.
Well, I think one of the next big shoes to
Maybe
drop.
Herpes is a better one.
Because like one of the things that set the CIA apart from the FBI is the CIA got its money laundering operation together like way better, and there are alternate lines of funding for the CIA that exist like outside the United States, right? Without going like too far into it. Right. And I think that if you think that the FBI doesn't have alternate funding or isn't practicing some of the same tactics, then you would be naive not to think so. Because if it's working so well for one set of missions and objectives, like I would just assume that it's happening on the other side too. I can't prove it. These are just allegations. Like I just know how organizations tend to work, especially in the federal government, right? And do notice when Elon was in there going through and like turning over the books, and you were finding out about Gay Sesame Street in Guatemala, and you were finding out about, you know, like women's rights initiatives in Pakistan and all this other type of stuff, right? Everybody was like, oh my God, that's where our federal dollars are going through USAID and whatever. Like just how fast Trump and him all of a sudden had beef, and that got shut down almost immediately. You know, Doge was allowed to expire, and now it's gone, and nobody even talks about it anymore.
Right.
You know, I honestly think that he may have, you know, a la Minds of Moria from Tolkien, delved too greedily and too deeply, and then all of a sudden he awoke what was slumbering in the darkness.
Well, you saw his interview.
He paid the price for it.
Right,
you saw
because
his interview
most
with
of that
Rogan,
money
right?
wasn't going to those programs.
Right.
No. Well, he was like, if I talk about this, they're going to kill me. He literally said that to Joe Rogan. Yeah, so I think you're right, Chris. The abyss stared back at him.
And real quick, going back to audiences on both sides, not audiences here, but like sects of America. Like for everyone who's like so pumped about this, that, or the other, whatever the issue is, it could be. And there's some good stuff to be pumped about. To be clear, like there's some things that are happening for sure.
Totally agree.
But you can't, like, so many the ones that are like brainwashed, like give a pass. Like you were so pumped about Doge and all the cuts. Can you believe this shit? And then nothing happened. Just like the arrest, nothing happened. And they're like, yeah, but we're still killing it. And whatever the next excuse is, like, what?
That's it, dude.
Like, you don't want any accountability. You don't want any action. It drives me. It's freaking ridiculous. And you're absolutely right. That onion got peeled way down to its core, and it smelled like shit. And the only way for people not to die was just to move on and to give us some new things to talk about, which is what, of course, we've already addressed today, and that's what they're doing.
They did the exact same thing. Yeah, with the like I was saying earlier, the date, right, with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Was back in December. It came and went, and the same administration that's telling you how awesome its people is telling you how awesome the FBI is, and look at all of these statistics and look at what our people are able to do, are the same people that are also decrying the bureaucracy and saying we don't have the assets that are needed to go through all of these millions of pages of documents and turn it out. So now, which is it? Are we staffed with incredibly, truly amazing people that, you know, go and accomplish anything that we turn them loose on, or are we plagued by a bureaucracy deep state that can't move, you know, to save its own life? I mean, the answer is yes.
Right.
Right. Like there are some good people, obviously.
Right.
Is the bureaucracy entrenched? Obviously. Right. It's if you look at it objectively, you use whichever excuse that you need at the time to promote the narrative that you want put out there.
Right, and with the Epstein files coming and going, what did we get? We got, you know, craziness going on in Minnesota to divert everybody's attention away from that. When the to me, it's a very simple solve. If you have, you know, Jesus Fernandez, who, you know, is wanted for, you know, murder, and he's booked into your jail in Minneapolis, you pick up the phone and, you know, you call ICE and say, hey, we've got Jesus Hernandez. Why don't you come get him? But what they decided to do was release all these guys out and have the federal government say, okay, go find them now. And so now, instead of just having an easy pickup for ICE, they're playing hide and seek. And so, of course, that brings out all the crazies to try and block all these arrests. So you're diverting attention away from what I think is really important, you know, the Epstein case and, you know, what he had his hand in. You know, to me, it's more than, you know, the sex trafficking. That's a part of it. That's the most salacious part of it. And it's the most disgusting when you start talking about underage kids, and that gets all the headlines. But when you drill a little deeper, knowing how much contact he had with big tech, with science, with Hollywood, with other foreign countries, it's massive, the amount of contact this one dude had. And all of a sudden, you know, all of our attention is diverted by, you know, chasing Hispanic people out of car washes and talking about how awful it is.
Yeah. Well,
The high school
I think
math
that
teacher.
some of the oddest evidence of Jeffrey Epstein being a tool of the U.S. government is his attempt at infiltrating a lot of high-level university programs. Like, have you seen Eric Weinstein talk about learning that Jeffrey Epstein was actually walking around his department and trying to get interviews with and talking to other physicists? Have you seen that? Like he actually, I want to say that Eric actually talked to him too at one point and was wondering, like, why are you here? You have no relation to this. And then he learned later down the road, because of the release of some of these Epstein files, that Jeffrey Epstein was actually pulling a lot of his research on like anti-gravitic propulsion and some of these other really odd things. And the thing I think is, and the reason why, and this is what Eric says, and I agree with him, is that the U.S. government was looking for physicists and other like high-level scientists that they could blackmail essentially and take their research and use it. And I think that was one of his functions, essentially, were to get in good with these physicists, just to use like Eric's realm, and then figure out a way to blackmail them and then make them work for the U.S. government, because we do have a divide between the private sector and the government. There's, you can't force Silicon Valley or whatever to work with the U.S. government, right? I think that's to me is one of the surest signs that he was an actual tool for blackmail, the way that people say he is, outside of the sexual blackmail piece. Like, there was the U.S. government, I think, was using him specifically.
It's very coincidental that, this plasma researcher ends up getting killed, and we're all supposed to buy the story that this dude from Morocco that he went to college with 20 years before was pissed at him for getting better grades and, getting into a better school. And that's been memory hold. So getting back to what you're saying, Brandon, it's like, he was collecting this information. So who is the new Epstein collecting this information? And to me, this physicist, this plasma physicist that got killed, could he not be bought? What's the whole story behind that? Because I think at least us four believe that the story that we're given is total bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then how much of the Jeffrey Epstein thing is controlled opposition to advance other parts of this narrative? It's very easy to release tidbits of information that are partially true to get people riled up again, like what you're talking about, Tom, and then drive more action. And then you get people angry at one another again, because instead of getting mad at the people who are arbitrating this stuff, it's like, well, I'm mad at Drew now because he supported Barack Obama, and now you're mad at me because I supported, whomever, Donald Trump, and like you're mad at the symbol, and now because you're mad at the symbol, you're mad at the person, and that's exactly sort of the goal that something like COINTELPRO was doing, was taking these ideologies like communism or the concept of civil rights or these other things, and they were assigning all of the meaning into one person and then attacking that person. So they were creating straw men essentially out of all of these different ideologies and beliefs, and even if that person wasn't representative of all those things, they become representative of that. And that's sort of one of the goals here of propaganda, and one of the things that Hoover's FBI learned really, really early on is that if you attribute one person, it's kind of like the joke about student debt, that if we just transfer everybody's student debt to one person and then kill them, everybody's good to go now. Like, that's kind of like what it is. It's like, well, we'll just put all this crazy shit on this one person, and then everybody will hate him, and then we'll kill him later on, and then we'll get rid of it. Whereas you can't kill an idea, that you can't do that at all, but they sure try. But that's what it is. It's an art form of turning a person into a representation of a set of ideologies and trying to kill that ideology by killing that person.
We just need one holy Giga Chad to take one for the team. You know what I mean?
Right. He is $2 trillion in debt.
I will say this though, and I know that Drew can back me up on this, right? But if you want to look at and I'm going to preface this by saying, when it comes to being an asset, assets can be witting or unwitting assets, right? Like, people can be used and not realize that they're being bumped and used, but then there are witting assets that you can actually employ to do things. But if you want to target people, and if you're looking through the lens of like who's going to be an asset and who's not, the thing that you always want to look for, especially for the higher level ones, is access and placement. and specifically access and placement that doesn't make sense for the resume. Always look for that, right? And the Epstein one is the most glaring example that you gave, because here's a high school science teacher without a college degree, that all of a sudden knows some of the most powerful, wealthy, most influential, highest level academia people in the world, and he's running around in all of these groups. It baffles the mind, and it doesn't make sense, right? But then to go back to the COINTELPRO thing, you can make the same argument for MLK and a dude that was isolated and then all of a sudden, propped up to this pedestal, and then isolated, like identified and then amplified to be this civil rights leader that comes out of left field, right? And then goes on to do this thing, which by the way, just to pull the crew, MLK Day kind of came and went. And I know we've had a crazy news cycle with what's going on in Minnesota, but was your guys' feed basically kind of devoid of the veneration of MLK this year, or was that just my algorithm that it kind of came and went?
For the most part, yeah.
Nobody talked about it.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't want to share what else was in my feed, but like
yeah, for real though,
there was an absence of that. Like, and usually you can't avoid it.
My feed was mainly, that was the night of the national championship, so my feed had a lot of college football stuff.
Right.
And then my algorithm I keep getting, videos of, black people's reactions to magic tricks. Dude, those are some of the most priceless videos that are out there. They have the best reactions ever.
I forget why you would have watched one and now it's in there, but like, how did you find one?
Drew's like,
go back to David Blaine. Watch the old David Blaine ones when he's with the Dallas Cowboys, and then instantly your Instagram feed will be black people's reactions to magic.
I tell you what, man.
What a niche group, dude.
The Instagram feed, like, I feel like they work like overtime. It's so fast. Like, you see one thing and you stay on it for 3 seconds. Like, damn it, that was too long. And then all of a sudden you're like spending days like having to seek out different things to change it. Like, all right,
I don't want to see single mom content
I'd rather
anymore.
have my feed be this than that.
Drew's down there going, if I die, I need you to go on my phone and like a bunch of big booty Latinos really fast. Change my algorithm.
Right.
Don't let them know.
You probably had it too. We had rules overseas. Like, hey, man, if I get waxed today, here's the device.
Burn box?
Yep.
Yeah. 100%.
With the rebranding of COINTELPRO, I think about, back in like 2010, 2009, 11, in that time period when we had Occupy Wall Street, and then you also had like the Tea Party movement. And you had the Tea Party movement that was concentrated on waste in government. And then you had the Occupy movement that was, they were focused on big business and the government collaborating with big business. And then you felt like a sea change at Ferguson. Then it became, okay, now we're dividing everybody amongst race because the peasants are beginning to figure out what exactly is going on here. And so once you had the division with race, then you started getting into a lot of the gay stuff and a lot of the trans stuff. And those sort of social schisms seem to have been born out of those two movements kind of focusing in on the same thing at the same time. And so then you start seeing the social unrest to where we have today. So to me, that's just an extension of COINTELPRO using, it's not the same program, but it's, to me, using the same template.
Yeah.
It is. Well, think about Charles Manson. What was he on about, right? A race war. And that's a lot of different agencies touching that, right? MK Ultra, COINTELPRO, Hollywood, right? Tom, you know a lot about that, but that was his entire thing. This was a narrative painted very, very well during the civil rights era that this was going to be a race war, and there were villains that didn't look like villains on a lot of other sides, or on a lot of sides rather. MLK being one of these people that was more useful, but then you go look over in the same group of people fighting for civil rights, you have Malcolm X, right? Then you have somebody like Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers was shot and killed out in front of his own home. Somebody who was there, standing up against like the White Citizens Council, somebody who was making himself known on the news, somebody who was talking about taking black people and then not contributing to white businesses. And he got shot and killed by the KKK, but notably not willing to work with some of these bigger groups that were there for that civil rights message, wanted it to be more grassroots. That was his goal. And what was Malcolm X doing too? Some of these other organizations, right? So it's like, who's playing ball, who's not playing ball, and then where are these other offshoots coming from and going into to help proliferate this message? I think like Charles Manson is an example of one of these wild hairs that you can sort of funnel this idea into because he's so fringe. This concept seems crazy, but then it's like, well, yeah, that's crazy. The government would never do that. And then almost everything that's going on is talking about race war. It's like, well, there's a massive amount of cognitive dissonance going on to get you to think that that's not happening and that these two things aren't completely and totally parallel to one another. It's me watching magic tricks, not black people. That's really what it is.
Right. 50 years plus removed from the Manson murders, and you look at the whole theory that Bugliosi put in front of the jury about helter-skelter. And Manson, like you're saying, wanting the race war. But what happened after the race war? The race war happens, and the minorities, blacks and Hispanics, ended up winning, but they didn't know how to control power. So that's when Manson would come out of the desert with his family and start running the government. That was the ultimate goal that they wanted for it. And so you think, okay, that just seems like a harebrained idea. But then you start thinking about Malcolm X and what Malcolm X said about the liberal and the Democrat. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe, this helter-skelter scenario, MO, the Bugliosi put forward wasn't necessarily Charles Manson, which I don't think it was, after reading Tom O'Neill's book. It seems like it was something concocted by somebody else and given to Bugliosi to put out there. And I kind of feel like we're at this point now where this whole sort of race war is being pushed on us. Before it was blacks against whites, in the wake of Ferguson, in the wake of Minneapolis. And now
Joplin.
we're seeing, illegal alien riots now.
Right.
And it's still to divide that schism between minorities and white people. So, it's just, it's kind of, to me, it's less of a conspiracy and more of pattern recognition.
Yeah. Well, it always starts with the lionizing of a martyr too. Every single one of these things kicks off with a lionizing of a martyr, right? So obviously MLK assassinated, there you have that. And I do think it's funny too, by the way, how we were always raised to believe that MLK was the good guy, right? Glorious and exalted as he, venerated to the level of a saint. And Malcolm X was supposed to be the bad guy. And then you start digging into this and you open it up a little bit and you're like, hold the phone. Hold on.
Time out. Time out.
He didn't bite on that somehow. I was like, that's something.
But like what you were saying earlier, Tom, is absolutely correct, because in like I remember in the 90s, right? What was it? The death of, what was that guy's name? Justin Shepard, I believe.
Matthew Shepard, the gay kid?
The gay guy?
Yeah, in Texas.
Matthew Shepard.
And then it became, right, that there's that dividing line, and like we have our martyr, and then now it's like let's get the gay community, to get angry at the straight community, and here we go, we're gonna go down that rabbit hole. And then Ferguson, you called that one out, right? And like here we go again, and it always starts like the exact same way, and they're trying to do it right now in real time. I think the only thing that's holding them up, and this is kind of funny, is that the last two people that were shot was a white chick and a white dude. Right. And I think that's kind of holding them from cementing it and getting the martyr that they need to really get the juice that they need to crank this one up.
It can
and
so
also,
easily
I
be
think
used
God
either
has
way.
a say with the
Minneapolis right now. If this is not a white dude, like it's not going to Minneapolis, but like we saw the split back in 2020, and we've seen it in Lancaster, we've seen it in Ferguson, we've seen it in all these places, like, and a lot of the same protesters who were at all of those places. Hopefully you've got miles and hotel points. But Like, it's the same friggin' thing. And if it's a black person, like if or anyone of any minority makeup, like this thing is so much worse.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, I'm just waiting for the likes of a Jasmine Crockett to come out and be like, "Oh, you see, they're killing white people now, right? Why aren't you guys mad about this? Trump supporters, they're killing you, aren't you?" Like that, just try to turn it into an identity politics talking point. That'll happen. Eventually, somebody's going to make that point, right? No one cared about the Arinya girl who got stabbed in North Carolina. You looked, that raised a whole bunch of questions about, like, I didn't even know that you could be a judge in that state without a Juris Doctor. Like, that's insane. I don't know how that's a thing, but that's the way this works, man. Is identity politics is one of the oldest ways of getting people mad at each other. You can give examples of it in Rome. You can give examples of it in Persia. All of these places. It's one of these things, man, because people have a natural proclivity to look at others who don't look like them and then immediately go back to tribal mechanisms in their brain because there's a survival instinct that's going on, and it's just very easy to be exploited. Like, this is just human nature at the end of the day, which is why it's so effective.
Mm-hmm.
No, 100%. It is kind of ironically funny to me that the identity politics is the vehicle that's gotten them to as far as they have gotten to this point, but now it seems to be the Achilles heel in them fomenting the type of outrage that they desire to foment right now because it's not falling enough into the identity politics paradigm that they've set up for themselves. So it's like they can't get people sufficiently angry enough about what happened,
right? Because there's with Ferguson and with George Floyd, you had the white savior syndrome where they were going to come in and try and right the wrongs of what's going on with law enforcement and what's going on with race and systemic racism and white supremacy in the United States. But in this instance, there isn't that. That white savior. There's nobody from any minority group that's swooping in and saying, "Hey, we got to save the white people." That's the arrogance that these folks on the left have, these white folks on the left have, when it comes to the rest of the population, thinking that they need saving and they can't do for themselves, which to me is a lot more racist and bigoted than anything that they're accusing anybody on the right from. Because what you're saying is this section of the population, they need our help. If they don't have it, we've seen all the videos about we see white liberals saying, well, minorities can't get driver's license, and then in the next breath you see an interview, hey, do you have a driver's license?
I don't even know what one
yeah.
is,
So this
Black kids are almost as smart as white kids. Didn't Joe Biden say that? Something to that effect?
Yeah.
He was such a treasure. I honestly kind of miss the guy. I don't miss his policies, but like we had such gold for so long.
It's true. There was a lot of fodder for social media.
So much.
Tom and Chris, you guys are touching on something. Like, everybody's familiar with the term like antagonism, right? Like, you're antagonizing somebody, but like these have like actual definitions. There's another word that's lesser known. It's called agonism, which sounds like maybe something your toddler would say if you were trying to get him to say the word antagonism. But there's a difference. So, right, like agonism, it goes back to the whole concept of like opponent and rival and enemy. Agonism is opponents who contest with one another for power and control within a set standard of rules. So this is what should happen with politics, right? Like, you have Democrats, Republicans, and then other parties, like at one point or another, they're contesting inside a shared set of rules. And then there's antagonism, which gets used, I think, too, when you mean agonism, but it's people who deny each other legitimacy. And that's what that means. To antagonize is treating somebody like an enemy and denying them their legitimacy. That's what you see more and more every single day. The politics has become antagonism. It's not agonism anymore. The way people treat one another because of that has become antagonism. Like, the MO has become to delegitimize and deplatform people and treat them like they are not in your group anymore in any way, shape, or form. Not somebody who's working for the mutual benefit. Even if you're going down two different roads, you hope that you both arrive at the same station. Like, that doesn't even happen anymore. And I keep going back to this because it's just the truth, man. Like, this is the efficacy of all of this propaganda over and over and over and over again. And even when we know for a fact that things like COINTELPRO existed, Here's all these lies that LBJ, here's all these lies that Hoover came up with and the people that work for him. It's on paper. We know this happens. We know the Patriot Act exists. We know all these other things. People still, they'll look at that and be like, oh man, that happened. I'm pissed about it. And I'm only mad because a Republican did that, or I'm only mad because a Democrat did that, rather than understanding that these people demonstrably just want you divided and getting mad about that, and then working together to do something about it and try and actually have like a revolution of ideas in a way. It just don't, man. It's just like, it's so much easier to get mad at one another than it is to actually do something about it. And social media is the perfect mechanism to feed into that and then check that box mentally every day. Well, fuck the other side. And then you're going to go on side and you're going to boop, boop, boop. I'm going to say some shit to somebody else. And now I've done my good deed for the day. And I've made everything better because I went online and told somebody they were a retard because of X, Y, and Z. And that's it. That's it. That's the level. And that just shows you just like how lazy most people are. Like that enough. It suffices them and their feeling of trying to change something. It's just a fucking gotcha.
Yeah. Well, that's the game, man. This is an us versus them, matchup here. Them being the political elite, the uniparty, everyone who's sowing this chaos, sowing this division, putting these fissures out there to make us all feel that way. And like, honestly, fuck the hard radical left and their like 3, 5, 7 percenters. And the same thing with the far right. Hate you guys just as much. Look at me, just as much. But the 85% who are in the middle, most of which are still fighting with each other, maybe not as aggressively. It's like, this is exactly what they want. Like, we're fighting each other when our enemy is a common enemy, and we actually agree on way more things than we probably disagree on. And we've gotten past that. Like, that's an oversight now. Like, we don't see it that way anymore. But that's reality. Like, the big issue is we're incapable now of living in reality and seeking it out and seeing it for ourselves. We just literally go with whatever the internet tells us, or the guy down the street, or the guy at the water cooler, or the guy that we follow on X. Like all of humanity's, it's not just the other side. Like, all of humanity's kind of become retarded. Like, okay, we'll just do this.
Well, you put a really interesting question in my head. I think for some people, the line between reality and social media, that they've already crossed into it. I think that the rose-colored glasses, as it were, they've got them on. They put their phone down, but they're still in that paradigm that social media has. I think there are a larger group of people who can sort of set those things down. Maybe it takes a few minutes, like once you emotionally discharge, right? And then you're now back in reality and what's going on. Chris and I have talked about this a lot, where we say, like, everybody's like, oh man, civil war, all this shit. It's like, well, yeah, you know what? Actually, I think a cold civil war has been going on for a long time, and in this like factional way that we've talked about. But do you guys think that there will be a point where there's maybe like a mass movement of people who just sort of all come offline at some point, and their online paradigm all at once becomes their reality paradigm, to where this like cold civil war shifts into a group of people enough to where they're now acting on this false paradigm that the algorithm has fed them? Like, not just the onesie twosies that you can deal with, but like, I'm talking like epidemically.
I don't know. I tend to think what Chris was describing earlier is I think a good way to look at it. And Tom, you're on the side view here, so the corner of my eye, I think I stepped over you, so I apologize if I did.
It's okay.
The thing is yes, I think people are going to be prone to want to do that, and I also think that you're right. Well, let me finish my other thought, because I'll forget the first one. I'll probably forget the other one either. But I think that the people who are driving all of this chaos do not want it to get to a certain point, because you go from having control to actually being like, right now it's controlled chaos for them. It's chaos for us, and everyone hates each other and it feels like the world's spiraling, and it is to an extent, but they don't want it to go to that next level, because they lose some of the power control, they lose some of the benefits that they've got currently if it gets to that level. So I would think that there's let's get to the outer edge of this box and try and keep everything in there. That's kind of my sense. Because here's the other thing: if it goes that way, it's not going to be pretty for anyone, but it's certainly not going to be pretty for the other side.
I would agree that the people who would do that are the people that are the least prepared.
Yeah.
100%. You just look at the video. I was just watching a video before we came on of this chick who took a gulp of tear gas, and portly chick running down the street with a backpack rips it off and starts going medic, and then falls to the ground. And it's like, okay, first of all, you need more cardio. Second of all, whatever you have in your book bag, it's way too packed if you plan on being some sort of insurgent, because mobility is key. And if you're weighting yourself down, you can't, retreat, you can't attack, you can't do anything. And so just having your frame of reference of what you think, a resistor or a rebel is, the mentality just isn't there when you get it from, the media, when you get it from TV shows, or you get it from, movies. Once the reality hits you of what exactly it takes physically to be ready to put yourself into a situation, to go into battle, they're clueless.
I want to answer your question that you had, Brandon, and then respond to what you said, Drew, and kind of wrap it up in the same thought. I think that by and large in the United States, and as much as I'm a red-blooded patriot, and this obviously isn't everybody, but I'm talking about like the majority here, or at least a plurality, like 60, 70% of people in the United States are just unserious people. Like, they are just unserious people. And
totally agree.
The whole idea of you're only ever 5 meals away from chaos, I think in the United States, you're probably looking at more like 2 or 3 meals away from chaos. If the power were to go out, and literally just the power were to go out and the internet were to turn off, the majority of people in the United States would be a loot drop, like instantly. And they're just not prepared, or have, to the point that you were making earlier, Drew, nothing because you've been nowhere and you've experienced nothing. You've never legitimately gone through anything that's hard. You've never even realistically been hungry and tired. And I'm not talking about hangry like you need a Snickers because you had to walk to work this morning. I'm talking legitimately hungry and tired, like that Ranger school you've been going for 48 hours and now you got to go do a mission kind of thing, right? Like you just haven't. So when it really happens to you the first time, you're just going to fold like a cheap suit. You're going to collapse into a puddle of your own piss and tears, right? And I wish that weren't the way about my people. I wish the American people were a little hardier, but there's a reason we're being subverted by radical Islamists in our own country, because we're just not serious, and we just do the work. We just don't stand up for ourselves. Christians won't stand up for themselves based on their religion. The American right won't stand up for itself to enforce law and order. This shooting just happened, and then I saw right before we sat down on here that CBP is being removed from the situation, and like we're de-escalating, and that may or may not be the right move. But what I'm just saying is like when things get hard and push comes to shove, like look what we typically do.
CBP is leaving, ISIS staying.
But to your point that you were making, Drew, about like the liminal zone, and going back to that, and I have a prediction to make. So whenever this episode drops, watch what happens in Minneapolis over the weekend of the Super Bowl. Just watch it. It'll go down. Everybody's going to go back inside. They're going to watch the Super Bowl. Bread and circuses will happen. It won't be that big of a deal. They'll get over their hangover on Monday, and then probably by like Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll see people kind of start going out to the street. We're just fundamentally unserious people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the narrative is going to be hijacked. It's something else that the government is working on is going to drop, because after Super Bowl Sunday, that Monday, everyone else is going to be talking about how much they hated Bad Bunny wearing dresses at the halftime show, how they didn't like what B.J. Armstrong said while Green Day was doing their set, what he says about, Trump. That's what's going to be the narrative, and that's when you have to look at D.C. and say, okay, what are you motherfuckers trying to get away with now that everybody else's attention has been diverted?
Yeah.
Sure. And if you don't think that they don't plan their media cycles out into the future around events like this, then you're hilariously naive.
Yeah.
What is Congress going to talk about on Friday?
That they can't look at the events and the calendar and go, okay, here's our block that we're really mad about what's happening in Minneapolis. And well, let's rewind it just a little bit. Here's our block where we're really mad about Minnesota fraud, but then they're going to get really mad at the Somalis. Okay, so now here's our block where we're really upset about the protests and businesses being destroyed again. And then we can roll that out. And then here's our block where we'll talk about the Super Bowl and cultural issues, to your point, Tom, so that way we can keep the conservatives good and angry. And then right after that, now here's our block where we're going to talk. And that stuff's all planned, dude.
Yeah.
and they know, because they have the metrics.
Yeah.
They have the metrics to play you like a damn instrument. They know what you're going to do. They watch your
stats,
views.
dude.
They watch your views. They know the stats.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Well, and the one caveat to what I said earlier, like, because you bring up a point that we talk about a lot on the other show, or we did. So I think for the stuff that's being instigated, planned now, i.e. Minneapolis, the Summer of Love, St. Floyd riots, Ferguson, all that kind of crap, all the immigration related stuff, anything in that thing, that bin that we're doing, I think they only let it go. The powers that be only let it go so far. That's my view. However, you take some of the examples you throw out, let's say Iran, China, Russia, someone else kills the power, or let's just say that Mo has a bad day and he falls off a ledge and lands on some breaker, and I don't know how fucking power stuff works, but he kills the power grid and he's so bad they can't get him off there, so it's down for days. If something like that happens and it's not instigated by the powers that be in DC, it becomes Lord of the Flies so damn fast. And that's something that they can't control.
Right. Because
then it's just that's a different kind of chaos. That's like circumstantial, like this is what happens when this happens, and there's not a whole lot you can do, as opposed to this, which is planned. Like this feels real. Like it's terrible what happened in Minneapolis, but it feels real, all the protests and stuff that's happening. It's not. Like we talked about this last week. There's nothing organic about any of these protests here or abroad. Like everything is planned. There's some wiggle room of stuff that maybe's not, of course, but like it's planned. Something different that happens though, where all of a sudden you look at the DC sniper case and the chaos, like just the panic that happened with, from that, you take away people's, I'm in Florida, so during the summer, you take away my air conditioning. Well, like we don't have a very long window before I know how to get the Patriot. Like it's so like that's how society is, because we're jacked up.
Well, and you can tell to your point, the injects that are not I'm going to say at least not predestined, but at least pre-known about.
Right.
You can tell because it's either met with crickets. These are the two ways you can tell. It's either crickets, well, that's inconvenient, or it's you'll watch the media cycle for like 12 hours spiral until the talking points recoalesce. And then because it's like right now, you can clearly see left-wing talking point, right-wing talking point. And as those two points track parallel to each other, you can see, and never the twain shall meet. Like you can see them going right along in their predestined grooves. We're pro-law enforcement, you're anti-law enforcement, pro-child rapists, illegal immigrants, like whatever, which is really funny for me to watch them like throw themselves in front of tear gas for these criminals. And it's also, I just want to point out, really, really funny watching supposed right-wing individuals debase themselves, suddenly being so anti-Second Amendment to say you have no right to carry a weapon into a protest. What?
Dude,
wait.
Exactly.
Wait, what? What did you just say?
So deeply unserious.
Hold on.
Man. If this was any other situation, you'd all be like, "Yeah, I agree with constitutional carry."
100%.
But because of this, you're like,
"Where's his ID? Where's his ID?"
It's okay. It's okay when we do it. Don't you understand? But when you watch those unprepared for injects happen, and then all of a sudden those talking points will spiral for a second, and some of them will actually start to cross before those two tracks groove out again.
Yeah.
That's where you go, oh, they didn't know about that one coming.
Right.
That one was a...
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Well, to what Brandon was saying about this being a cold civil war as opposed to a hot civil war, I agree with Drew that I don't see it going that way because there's no sort of Jefferson Davis who's going to come out and say this place sucks, we want out, and they're not going to put their name on it. They're not going to break the kayfabe. They're going to keep the kayfabe going. Nobody wants to be. And Drew, you're going to like this metaphor. Nobody is going to be Scott Hall, Triple H, and Kevin Nash, and I forgot the other one. When they did the when they did the holding their arms up, when they were done with WWF and went to WCW.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna break it like that, because then all of a sudden you become the leader of the insurgency, and not
Agreed.
one politician on the left is going to be the one who's got a banner over their head saying, "Hey, I'm the new Jefferson Davis."
Well, it's so much harder to do anything like that now, right? Like this is not 1860 either. This country is far more established. There is a lot more interconnectedness than there ever was before. It's like you would have to like almost create a compound and then by right of conquest expand that compound into enough territory to be reasonably defended, and then have enough people move like that. I don't know. I just don't see. There's so many more mechanisms at play that you couldn't even do anything like that anymore. And I agree with you. Like nobody's going to Jefferson Davis themselves at all. Like the most you're going to get is ardent political opposition, and that's about it.
Well, you get what we're seeing now. You get quiet
Exactly.
war, like you're talking about, cold civil war.
Cold Civil War.
You're getting quiet balkanization. People are just like, deuces, I'm out of here. I'm not living in this state or that state. I'm going to Florida or Texas if I'm conservative.
Naturally happening.
Yeah, like you're going to these places. I'm going to Oklahoma. I'm going to South Dakota. Or you're a liberal in Florida. You're like, these people are crazy. Yes, we are. Get your ass out of here. There's plenty of crazy states for you. You can go kill babies and do all sorts of stuff in other states. Go do it there. But like that's happening, and I think that's just kind of how it keeps going. Is like, all right,
for the people on the ground, I agree with you 100%. If you widen your paradigm out and take a look at it from the wealthy kind of elite class versus the tiny little poors that are going to pick up and go live with people that they can agree with and share their social values and customs and like all of that, the idea of the anarchist on the ground can preach all day long about how they want to burn the system down and see capitalism come to an end and preach anarcho chaos and all that jazz. But realistically, if you're a person of power and you see the elite class, like this is the toy. Like the point of this isn't to see the toy destroyed. I want it. I don't care what all the little pores do underneath, but I want the system to be in place when this is all over. I just want to be in charge of it. So whatever I have to do to get you out of here. I mean, case in point, right, to make this tangible example is the Taiwan problem for China. China wants Taiwan. China could militarily, like they have missile systems on the far eastern side of the country that completely have Taiwan bracketed, and they could wipe everything off the face of the island in the span of a morning if they wanted to. But then they would have the problem of all the infrastructure on the island is gone, to include the semiconductor factories and everything that they actually want.
right.
So then you've cut your nose off to spite your face. I want Taiwan, but I want Taiwan still Taiwaning when I get it. This is the same problem for them. I want the United States and the levers of power and all of the wealth that the United States has and all the systems that it has and all of these powers that operate up under the bureaucracy. I just want it for me.
Yeah. Can we just take a time out? Because you bring up Taiwan. This has nothing to do with anything we're talking about.
I knew you were going to. As soon as you brought it up, I knew you were going to talk about this.
I've done. Everyone here has done their own crazy shit. Like I've done some crazy shit. I've chosen to do crazy shit. I consider myself an unwell person, generally speaking. That thing, I've never been so stressed in my life watching that dude climb the side of that building. Like, my heart hurts right now thinking of it. I had to get up and walk away a couple times. Like, apparently I'm a total pussy now.
101 floors, bro.
But I can't watch him do that. Like, did you guys watch that?
I did,
I
yeah.
haven't seen it
101
yet. I'll have to
floors
go
is
find it.
insane, dude. 101 floors, yeah.
He went back the whole time. Like,
He free climbed the whole fucking
He free climbed
thing,
a
dude.
building?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll have to
Dude,
go find
watching
this.
him get up onto the actual roof, because it's like this.
Yeah.
And he just
God.
gets, oh, dude, I was just like, he's going to fuck this up at the end, dude. Because there's nothing holding him. There was nothing holding him at all. Like, if he'd have fallen, that's it, man. There's not going to be the Looney Tunes fucking trampoline at the bottom for you, like, at all. But yeah, it surely.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know?
I didn't see. I didn't.
I can't think of something I've been like. I'm sure there has been, but like you know, you flip a switch, you go overseas, you get on the plane, you head over, and you become a different person.
Yeah.
And then you see therapists and counselors when you get back, and you figure it out. But like, I'm watching that. I'm like, I don't think I've been this uncomfortable. You know,
It's because you had no control.
I haven't
you
seen
have
that yet.
control
I'm
in
gonna
those
go.
situations.
I'm gonna go look it up. But I had a similar experience watching that guy that free climbed El Cap.
The same.
That's the same
there was-
guy.
Oh, yeah.
There was
That's
a dude
it.
that. It was
It's
the same
it's
dude.
the same dude.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh shit!
No, his wife's there, and she's like waving through windows at certain points. It's like you're gonna watch him die.
She's taking the elevator, though.
Yeah,
you
she's
know?
taking the elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
he's leaning back. The wind is blowing. And then he turns around and waves to the crowd. I mean, I respect his
Balls of steel,
showmanship, but every time he would do something like that, you know, and I watched the replay of it because I was out working on Saturday, and Sunday I was watching it in the morning. I was like, man, this is really giving me a stomach ache to watch this.
Yeah.
Like, dude, get to the top. That's it, man. You don't need to wave at anybody, bro. We're already, you know, like, you don't need to make a statement.
Now,
Now, Chris,
This might be
It
too
was
much of
one.
a sideline thing, but can you
okay.
imagine the grip strength on that guy?
oh, dude.
Oh,
Oh, he's got like gorilla grip, dude.
yeah.
100%.
I know. Now
Yeah.
I'm wondering if like what his dick looks like after he beats off.
I was gonna say, don't go. Too late. You're going. You're just
like
slide in.
Where,
a deformed balloon
what are
animal.
the calluses like? You know.
All right.
Did you just turn it into a bicycle?
All I was gonna say, Chris, your point though about these individuals and seeking power, like they just want the toy. This is American foreign policy in action, right? Think of Kissinger going to Pol Pot in the Khmer Rouge and being like, well, I'm just going to give this psychopath a bunch of money and guns, and because I've done that now and given him power or access to the toy, we're gonna have more control over what happens here. And then the Khmer Rouge did what the Khmer Rouge did. And how many more people can we give an example out of this, right? Where he's like, well, I'll give this guy access to this power, you know, because at the end of the day, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and people's own greed is what going to motivate them. And then they go and do some other fucking shit because their interpretation of that and the license you've given them is totally different than what you expected. You know what I mean? Like, this is just, the Romans made this mistake. The Greeks made this mistake, you know? Yeah. So anyway, the Greeks were like, oh man, I'm mad at the Spartans. Let's bring the Romans in. And they butt fucked them both, you know?
I was just gonna say, I think what you
the
just described
Athenians.
is the rule.
Mm-hmm.
of
Exactly.
history.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
Not,
It's
not
like,
the exception. Yeah.
But
crazy.
then again, I believe that the Roman Empire never fell. It just rebranded into a church because it was a
And a bank.
moneymaker. Yeah.
exactly.
And a bank.
Check out our episode on.
You're right.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be a good place to wrap up, unless you guys have anything else you want to add to the convo. Sweet. Well, this one was fun. I'm not going to lie. I'm excited to see what happens the rest of the week with trepidation a little bit. But, hey, listen, check out the show notes. Go find the other shows that we're on. If you want to support us, we'll figure out a way for you guys to support us. But the best way for you to do that is to tell a friend about this show. Like it. Share it with somebody else. Hit the repost if you're watching it on Rumble. Give somebody the URL to watch it. Leave us a comment. Ask us a question about something in the show that you want to know. We'll get back with you, I promise. But as always, thank you guys so much for listening. Remember, nothing is as it seems, and we will catch you on the next episode.
This concludes our scheduled programming.